The appearance of parent of minor form. Hi, I'm Darren Findling of the Probate Pro, and we're going to examine the State Court Administrative Order Form PC 606. SCAO, State Court Administrative Order Form. PC stands for Probate Court. This form is used in very particular circumstances when filing things with the probate court. One of the nice things about all of these state court administrative order forms is that at the bottom where you see the floating arrow, it identifies the court rule or the statute or maybe both that control and give rise to the use of the particular form. In this one, it is a court rule, MCR, that stands for Michigan Court Rule, MCR 5.105D4. So when would this be used? Well, the court rule provides that in a guardianship or conservatorship proceeding, you have an obligation during those petitions and accounts and filings to give service to a minor that's involved in the estate. Now, if the minor is over the age of 14, you have to serve them directly. If they're under the age of 14, they can be served a variety of ways. And one of them is if the parent of that minor files this particular form. So for example, a 12-year-old is involved in a guardianship or conservatorship or a deceased probate estate. The appearance of parent of minor can be used. So the parent fills this form out and says that I, as the parent, are going to appear on behalf of this minor. So rather than the court appointing a guardian ad litem for that individual, or rather than serving a 6-year-old directly, there's this process that we've got that allows a parent to say, I'm going to accept the responsibility of receiving the service as it relates to all of the matters involved in that guardianship, conservatorship, or deceased estate proceedings. Now, one of the caveats here is that if you are filing the appearance of parent of minor, you actually have to certify that the individual, I know this sounds a little odd, is unmarried, which seems to be usually the case with most minors, as well as the fact that you are in conflict with their interests, meaning your interest and theirs are not in conflict. And you can imagine this may arise in certain circumstances. So for example, there could be a will contest in which the mother and the child are actually at odds as it relates to the inheritance that may be received. In addition to the conflict, you have to certify that they reside with you. So for example, if the child has been removed for some reason and is living with a relative or is under guardianship and you fill this form out, this form does not give you standing to then stand in the shoes of that minor. The minor has to actually reside with you. So let's work our way through the form. Top left corner, you identify the county in which the matter is proceeding. And if there's a case number that's already been identified by the probate court, you'd identify the case number there. Now, often this document is filed at the onset of filing an application for probate or a guardianship or conservatorship file. So there may not be a case number assigned at that particular point. As you continue to work your way through the document, in the matter of identifies whether you are identifying a guardianship or conservatorship estate, you'd put the individual's name there. If it's a deceased estate, you'd simply identify the name of the decedent as it's referenced in all of the other probate-related pleadings. Below that, you identify who you are, that you are the parent of that minor and who's interested in the estate, and you'd identify, for example, if they're interested in the estate as an heir of the deceased estate, or a devizee, meaning they're identified within the will, or maybe in a guardianship or conservatorship proceeding that you're an interested party by virtue of Michigan court rule or statute, you'd identify your name. Below that, where it says name of minors, you would identify any of the minors upon which you are serving or filing this appearance. So for example, if you have 3 children, you'd identify all 3 names and their respective dates of birth. So again, this form can be used really for any minor, and the appearance of parent allows you to step into their shoes even if they're over the age of 14, but it doesn't take away from the fact that there's a responsibility to do certain things in terms of service for any minor that is over the age of 14. So to understand the nuances of this particular use of the form or when you'd use it or not, feel free to contact me or speak to your attorney to make certain that you understand when this form is used and how it's used. As we mentioned earlier in that court rule, and as it relates to the use of this particular scale form, you have to make a certification. You're representing that the children or child is unmarried and resides with you at the address that you've identified. That you've got no personal interests that are in conflict, meaning the two of you are at odds in some way or may share in some way in the interest of the estate, except as follows. So if they exist, you'd identify what those conflicts may be so that the court can decide whether it's appropriate for you to be in an appearance or whether the court needs to appoint a guardian ad litem or something else to be able to address that conflict that exists between the parent and the child. This doesn't happen very often, but it does and it could exist. And if it does, you have to identify what that conflict may be. As we work further down on the document, the parent's signature is on the right and their address and date. And then if there's an attorney that's representing the parent, you'd identify the name there. And there is not a requirement, for example, on any scale form for there to be an attorney, but there's always a space to identify whether an attorney is involved for purposes of the filing in that particular case. With all of these forms, you have to be very careful on how you complete them and make sure you understand the interplay between the form, the statute, and the court rule. And if you've got questions, you should always be speaking with your attorney. At the Probate Pro, we're passionate about everything probate. If you have questions about the appearance of parent of minor or any probate or trust related issue, visit us at theprobatepro.com or call us at 1-833-PROBATE.